We've got another great story to share with you today, an inspiring journey into local government leadership, because that's what we do here on the Halting Winter podcast. We tell the stories behind the titles, the unique paths into public service, and the moments that shape how these leaders show up, even when the work gets heavy. Every day, local government quietly makes modern life possible, and behind every service is a person doing work that often goes unseen. This is the Halting Winter podcast, and I'm Seth Winterhalter. Every week, I have the pleasure of sitting down with local government leaders from across the country that remind us where government really lives, locally, doing the work that truly matters. This is the work that builds belonging. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Tyler Technologies has been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998, partnering with cities and counties to make their work more manageable, more connected, and more effective. From smarter budgeting to artificial intelligence, Tyler equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore a variety of free resources at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. And if today's conversation resonates with you, I want to invite you to check out the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. It's a global community of local government leaders who are committed to growing together, supporting one another, and leading well in the middle of municipal pressure. You can learn more about the MLDC at haltingwinter.com/MLDC. That's haltingwinter.com/MLDC. And now, let's turn to today's conversation. My guest on the podcast today is Jesse Muñiz, Head of Customer Success for Tyler Technologies. Man, I can't wait to dive in. We know that AI is just the talk, artificial intelligence, this, every conference, every conversation. But today we're going to dive into the real things. How can we really help local government, cities, counties? How can we actually help you take some steps forward? And so, Jesse, really looking forward to our conversation today. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you inviting me. I've listened to your podcast and see some of the guests that you have. So it's quite an honor to be included with some of these folks that you've interviewed. Thank you.
Well, it's going to be fun. I look forward to all your insights. And this is what's beautiful about your story is you've been in the weeds of local government. We're going to dive into the City of Albuquerque and your tenure there. And so you got to see under the hood. So now working with Tyler Tech, specifically with priority-based budgeting, you're going to be able to help our audience really understand the what, the why, and the how. And so I look forward to diving into that. But obviously, before we dive into all that you're doing professionally and all of your insights, we gotta get to know you as a person. We gotta rewind the tape, take us back to the beginning, tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where were you born, and kind of what has shaped you on this unique path?
Thanks. So I was actually born in Woodland, California, which is about 20 miles, I guess, northwest of Sacramento, California. So lived in that region for about 3 years. When I was about 3 years old, my family moved to Waco, Texas. Work took us there, I think, as far as I remember. So it was our family, other members of my family, aunts, uncles, cousins, all moved to Waco, Texas. Waco is infamously known for, situations that had years ago, right? And so didn't know that back then. But lived there for a little while. And as a kid, when I was about, I'd say 7 years old, my parents divorced. And so at that point, my journey kind of took a interesting turn. So we spent a lot of time moving between California and Texas. I had family in southern Texas and like in the Kingsville, Texas, Corpus Christi area. Again, my family I did have still in the Sacramento area, specifically Davis, California. So we would kind of go back and forth for a while between the two. And so as a kid, it's a lot of moving, but also a lot of fun because it's road trips, right? And so getting to see, Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. Every time I hear, there's certain songs that I hear in my life that always draw me back to those times, specifically George Strait. Every time I hear George Strait, it just takes me right back to that 1982 Toyota Celica. My dad and I just kind of hitting the road. And so a lot of fun there. But like in that time, I spent a a lot of time in kind of different elementary schools, as you can imagine. So went to school in Texas, elementary school in California, really, never really getting fully comfortable in an area because you just weren't quite sure like when we were going to take the next journey. And so got to, but also at the same time, got to meet a lot of people, met a lot of friends, a lot of teachers who've really, over time, as we go through this, I feel like has really shaped me as a person, as who I am now. Settled in New Mexico, which I reside now in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but we started off in New Mexico in a small town, Alamogordo, New Mexico, which is home of Holloman Air Force Base, and went to school there, elementary school there for a while. At that point, we moved to another little town in Loving, where I literally went overnight from an elementary school to a middle school, sixth grade. Like, so like the big shock and change of like having recess to all of a sudden go into lockers every hour, it's like a big change. And so did my middle school years there in Loving, ended up moving back to Texas for a little while where I started high school. I had high school there until my sophomore year in a little town called Falfurrias, Texas, famously known for their butter, which I didn't know that they made really good butter. And a lot of agriculture there, and so really, really fun, a really fun time of my life, though. Really got involved in a lot of things there, school activities, sports, music. I was in the marching band. So, played saxophone, played percussion. South, Texas is known for high school football. South Texas is really known also for marching band. And so they have huge marching band competitions and, being a part of all that, which was really a fun time of my life. And then again, sophomore year, high school, once again, we moved, ended up in Hobbs, New Mexico, which is where I eventually graduated high school. And so from Hobbs, New Mexico, because I was residing in the state, I had started my college career at the University of Mexico here in Albuquerque. And so that's how I ended up here in Albuquerque. Been here since. It's been, when I last counted, I think it was like 26 years, 27 years that I've been here. So I've seen this city grow tremendously. I've seen this city have its growing pains and continue to have, some growing pains. But it's a wonderful city, great community. Love the people that live here. Where I live, I'm literally about 10 minutes away from a trailhead. The Sandia Mountains are the backdrop, or you can take a 10,000-foot hike, any day of the week that you really want. And so great place to live. And, I'm really glad that my journey has kind of taken me here up until this point.
I love it. Okay, we got to unpack a few things. First, I visited Albuquerque. I'm trying to remember. I think it was 97, 98. A friend of mine from college in Springfield, Missouri, his dad was a pastor. His family was a pastor in Albuquerque. So we went out there, went to Dallas, kind of did this whole road trip. I just remember Albuquerque we played golf out there, and it was like 1 billion degrees. It was so hot. And it was just but it was gorgeous. Stunning, it's kind of that New Mexico, Arizona kind of landscape. It was just so just gorgeous. And so here you are. What's unique is, you've been all over the place growing up. And so did you have any awareness of local government as you're in all these places? Any awareness of what local government is, what a city manager is, any idea of local government?
I would probably say when I was younger, didn't really obviously probably pay attention to any of that sort of thing. It wasn't really until I started my career after college that I just kind of fell in love with local government. It was at that point, I think it was my second job out of college, worked for a local firm here in Albuquerque. And I was an auditor, a financial statement auditor, and our main clientele was state and local governments in New Mexico. And it was at that point, I just kind of like got hit by the local government bug. Being an auditor, you kind of, get to see the things behind the scenes, how things operate. You got to fully understand how organizations work to get a good grasp on what you're auditing. And I was just fascinated by local government and just realized like, man, these people, they work hard every day. They have a mission to serve and help people. Really appreciated, what they did. And so it wasn't until like much later on in my life that I really got a grasp for local government and fell in love with it.
Isn't that interesting? It's so interesting to me. And that's why the podcast exists. We're trying to shine the spotlight on local government, not only for young people to consider it as a career opportunity, but to encourage those who are currently in it, because it's one of those things that impacts people on a daily basis. And yet no one really knows, like, what, we know police and fire, but how many even know that that's a part of your municipality usually? So it is fascinating. So you're here, you're growing up, you're playing the saxophone. Now that's an instrument, but yet your undergrad is going to be in business administration accounting, because I love to encourage young people and show them that there is no one path. What were you thinking when you went to college? Did you have a certain, were you thinking about accounting? How did you end up with that degree, and how did you start in that career path?
Yeah. I would say that career path was really heavily influenced by my dad. My dad's a, blue collar worker, grew up, jobs he did was construction, maintenance. And so just as I grew up, he just highly encouraged me, one, to do well in school, study. I think his dream for me was to avoid having to do hard labor. Right. And so, he always encouraged me to get some sort of like office job, you don't want to be out on the roofs and working with hot tar and stuff. So, it was heavily influenced by him, and as part of, going to school and everything, math was one of my favorite subjects in school. And the thing I liked about math was, like, it felt like it was solving problems, right? And not just obviously equations, but just like when you're learning math, it's all this problem solving capabilities. And so I felt I was really good at that. So I naturally going into college, being influenced by, what my dad's dreams were, really liking math and that side of thing. It's like, it made sense. So, like, why not? Right. And so, yeah, first started off going to college with my mindset of going into business school, to get to my accounting degree. It was funny though, like during, I would say my freshman year, I'm reading the local paper there, the university paper, and I'm going through the want ads, and I don't remember what exactly for. I can't remember if I was looking for a part-time job or an apartment or something, but I happened to come across an ad that talked about needing sports-minded people. And so I was like, huh, that's interesting. I love sports. Like, I played sports, I watch sports. So I wonder what this is about. So I go to the place to kind of ask some questions, and it was the local paper looking for some freelance reporters for the university paper there. And I thought, oh, okay, so what is it that I would do? And they're like, oh, you would just go to games, you would go to practices, you would talk to athletes and coaches, and you just write stories. And mind you, I had never at that point dabbled into writing or anything like that, just my, English classes, et cetera. And so I thought, well, this is fun. Like, I get to go talk to athletes and coaches and maybe go to events. Like, sign me up. So I did. I signed up, became a freelance reporter there for the local paper. And man, that was fun. It was a lot of fun, especially being, 19, 18, 19-year-old kid who enjoyed sports, to be able to go talk to some of these, like, they're world class athletes, right? NCAA Division I athletes. And so, talking to tennis coaches, basketball coaches, football coaches, really getting to meet a lot of interesting people throughout that process. And so at one point in my career in college, I thought I might want to do this instead. Like, I think journalism might be the thing I want to do. Like, I used to dream about, being on Sports Center and, being a field reporter. And I thought, hey, this is great. So I started to kind of go down that path. I started taking classes. I continued to work for the paper. I was the sports editor for a little while for the school newspaper there. And during that time, I got to really meet interesting people, and notably, for University of New Mexico and the football team. Luckily, we had a guy by the name of Brian Urlacher who was on the team, Hall of Fame linebacker for Chicago Bears, right? And so he went to school at University of New Mexico, and he was there at the time I got to be a reporter. And so, having to get to have weekly conversations and press conferences with someone like him was wonderful. Also got to meet some other really cool people in 1999. The Los Angeles Lakers and Portland Trail Blazers came to an exhibition game at the University Arena at the Pit. On that team was head coach Phil Jackson, was the Lakers head coach. They had Shaquille O'Neal and a young kid by the name of Kobe Bryant on that team as well. Portland Trail Blazers had Scottie Pippen, Rasheed Wallace. And so, again, as a 19-year-old kid, I've watched Scottie Pippen growing up, for the Chicago Bulls, and watched Shaquille O'Neal in college. And then here I am getting to cover an event where Phil Jackson, the coach that I admired, and these players are there, and being able to interview and listen to these guys. And I would say my most famous interview was Kobe Bryant himself. That was an opportunity to speak to him and ask about his journey. I think he was 21 years old at the time. So, new face. And he was such a nice guy, so genuine. I approached him in the back there and asked him if I could have a conversation with him, a few questions. And he was like, sure, come on over, and asked me who I was, who I was with, and how I was doing. And then I just kind of got into his time in Italy, and, coming straight from the NBA to high school to the NBA, and really, really, really cool guy. And the funny thing in that whole scene was, prior to that game, people made it like well known that we're professional reporters, right? So you're talking to athletes. Don't ask them for autographs or anything like that. Like, okay. So I went in the mindset like, okay, I get it. Well, after like the kind of everything was going on, I saw people bringing out little mini basketballs and the programs, and they were having them sign. I'm sitting there going, hey, wait a second, you guys told us we weren't allowed to do that. And so after my interview with Kobe, I asked him, I was like, do you mind signing my program? He's like, sure. So he autographed my program, and it sits in my daughter's room now. She's really proud. I actually went to her school the other day to talk about my career, and I mentioned my time as a journalist, and all the kids obviously were like, they didn't want to hear about my accounting time. They wanted to hear about my time as a reporter. That's right. Obviously.
I love it. Well, that's so cool. It's like, again, your it's so interesting, these little things that happen, right? That influence our journey. You see a little ad, you go do a little, reconnaissance and find out, oh, this is cool. I get to be paid to go to games. Okay. And then it leads to this. Now, here's the question. After dynamic experiences like this, I mean, you're meeting, NBA stars. How in the world did you go back to accounting? How are you not on SportsCenter today?
Sometimes I ask myself that same question when I think about it. But I recall thinking like, writing was fun. It was fun to kind of go to the events and do the things. It was also pretty demanding. There would be times where there'd be a game or an event that was, ending at 10 o'clock at night, and you had to have your story in by 10:30. So there's a lot of stress that goes along with stuff like that. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it. What I started to realize for myself was, writing was going to be a really good hobby. Writing was a really good skill set. And I learned a lot of really good things being a reporter and a writer that really translate to me today. I think about when I meet leaders, local leadership, I don't really feel intimidated, by some of these folks, because I got to talk to people like, Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal and Phil Jackson, right? And so why would I be intimidated? Like it's so like all these, and then being able to write and communicate with local leaders has translated as well, because those skills that I learned. And so I kind of decided that writing was a good hobby for me. But I really felt like, there's just something about calling me to back to business school, again, liking the accounting and the problem solving aspect of things. And so I went back into get my degree in business, and luckily LA, and I had to school an extra year ultimately, so it wasn't all that bad. So went to Anderson School of Management at the University of Mexico, graduated with my accounting degree, and then just went from there. But I always relished my time as a reporter. Even at one point, I worked for the local paper here in Albuquerque and got a few stories published in the local paper here. So really good time. I always draw back on that experience because I really do think that it's also helped me. I think about like when I'm trying to understand how local governments operate and what they do, I just go back to my time as a reporter. It's all about curiosity, asking questions, trying to understand, what they do. So I draw back to that time when I would ask questions as a reporter, and now it kind of translates to what I do today.
I love that. And we'll get into this obviously in your career here in kind of the private sector, but now in public sector, even, I had Chris Fabian on, and we were talking about priority-based budgeting is really storytelling. And that's where I think local government has to be better, is you have an amazing story and the numbers help you, your budget helps you tell a captivating story of how you're continuing to help your city function and flourish. And so we'll dive into that. I think it's interesting too. just to highlight the awareness. Like you saw the awareness of going, hey, this isn't just fun. I remember Zach Walker, who's city manager at the time when he was on the podcast, was a city manager of Independence, Missouri. Now he's in Minnesota, but he wanted to become kind of the sports, the voice of the I think the Kansas City Chiefs or the Royals. I can't remember which team it was, and so he got to shadow like the guy, like the guy who was their announcer, and the announcer was like, hey, Sundays are awesome, but like there's Monday through Saturday and you're traveling and you're away from your family. And it kind of woke Zach up to go, do I really want that? That's right. There's more than just the fun of it. It's actually work. And so there's an awareness that you had that kind of said, hey, this is fun, but this is probably a hobby. I think I want to make a career out of this. So just to encourage young people, sometimes we can get so daydreamy about, whatever I'm doing this degree in underwater basket weaving. It's like, that's fun, but that might be a hobby, not necessarily your profession. That's why local government, it's a great profession. It's a solid profession, and you get to be still missional and purposeful with your everyday work. So you graduate. You're going to work for a couple different places doing tax preparation. Grant Thornton, you're going to prepare individual and corporate tax returns. Then you go to Mainers and Company. And so tell us again, you already mentioned it, but you start to do some work on local government and you start to see this and your eyes kind of open. What did that look like? You're going to do this from 2003, 2010, and then all of a sudden, the City of Albuquerque calls and you start working for the city. Tell us about that transition and kind of what happened there.
Yeah, so I remember coming out of college. You're going through on college campuses, you're doing all the interviews, and you're interviewing with firms, and a lot of fun. Settled in on Grant Thornton, and I remember getting my first job offer and just thinking like, wow, this is exciting, right? And then my first job there was as a tax associate, and I recall probably within my first month that was there, I started to question if I made a mistake in getting an accounting degree. Like it had nothing to do with Grant Thornton or anything. Like the people were great. I had great bosses. But the idea of doing tax accounting, like I was questioning, I was like, is this what I really signed up for? Like, is this what I want to do with my career? So I, for a little while there, I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? And so luckily though, Grant Thornton was a local satellite office here in Albuquerque, and they had just obtained a large nonprofit organization to audit. It was the Make-A-Wish Foundation, if I recall. And so in order to audit the Make-A-Wish Foundation, they were going to have to use our satellite offices and do the regions. And so our Albuquerque office got assigned to audit some of the Make-A-Wish foundations in southwest part of the state, southwest country. And so they asked if I wanted to help do some audits. As a tax accountant, they were like, hey, we need some bodies. Would you be willing to do some audits? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Why not? I'll try it. And literally day one, the first time I went out to Sedona, Arizona to Make-A-Wish Foundation office there. Day one, started auditing, and I was like, there it is. Here it is. This is exactly what I studied for. This is exactly why I wanted accounting. And it was great. I fell in love with it. And so from there, funny, really quick backstory. Before I joined Grant Thornton, I actually was being recruited by Mainers and Company, who was also on my list. And so I remember when I joined Grant Thornton, my future boss had called me and was like, I don't know what happened. I thought we were gonna, get to land you. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I just I got a job offer. I was excited. And so a year later, I reached out to him and I said, hey, is that opportunity still open for you guys? Because I want to do some auditing. And he was like, sure. He was like, come on over. So we had this arrangement where we were going to give each other a year to kind of feel each other out and see how we'd like it. And I ended up there for 6 years at Mainers and Company doing audits. And first it was a lot of nonprofit work, dabbled into some insurance work. And then we started getting local government clients. First local government client I ever audited was actually, I think it was Bernalillo County here in New Mexico. And I was just the staff member on that engagement. And I had a senior accountant who ran the engagement. And she ended up, I ended up kind of following her along the way in my path, in my journey. And so she was a senior accountant at Mainers and Company. Worked a lot of jobs with her, doing different audits with Mainers and Company. She then moved on to the City of Albuquerque prior to me. And so I stayed with Mainers and Company, still doing auditing. And at one point, recall being able to reach out to her and saying, they needed some help. And I was like, maybe kind of looking to make a change. This has been fun, but it's just like, she brought me along to City of Albuquerque, and that's where I started my journey there as a principal accountant. Uh, she was an accounting officer at the time, I believe, and brought me in there and got into the City of Albuquerque, and it was great. I just kind of worked my way up. I remember day one, uh, her boss on day one comes to my cubicle and hands me a folder and says, "Here you go. I need you to reconcile this fund," and just walked away. And so I was sitting there going, "Oh wow, okay, this is great." Like, okay, and so again, kind of drawing back on my experiences, I'm like, all right, I just came from auditing state and local governments. Here I am in the municipality. How would I approach this as an auditor? And that was my mindset. It's like, if I was an auditor, how would I look at this fund? What would I need to do? And so I took it from there, dove into the fund, started reconciling, and it just kind of took off. And my time in Albuquerque was great. I learned so much about local governments, not only from miners and company side, auditing them, state governments, how they operate, just the things that they do, to then moving on to working for a city government. Again, really fully understanding how things operate. It was a great time. I got to be an accounting systems coordinator within the city of Albuquerque, which again, everything I've kind of ever done in my career somehow, some way goes back to something that I've dabbled in along the way. So my accounting systems role was to really understand how our systems work and how we matched it up with our business processes. Did we have the right technology in place? Did we have the right systems and processes in place? And so dabbling into that, I think, has helped me in my current role with Tyler Technologies, because again, offering software solutions and technology along with what governments are trying to do now. So it's funny how, some of these things that you end up doing along the way have really, they end up coming back and they shape to what you do now. My time in Albuquerque was invaluable because not only did I get to do accounting, I then at one point got to be selected to be chief procurement officer for City of Albuquerque. And that is a completely different role altogether. I mean, we're not even talking accounting anymore, right? We're talking compliance and rules and regulations, right? And so that was also a lot of fun, because now I'm getting into, how do you understand policy? How do you, follow directions? How do you do, go negotiate contracts? Again, so that was really super helpful. Funny thing is, the same person who brought me to the city, who I worked with at Miners Company, was working with the city council there in Albuquerque, and reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in working for city council. She needed help as far as the budget preparation process for city council. She essentially was the only one kind of doing the finance side of them. And so I joined her with city council and started working there. And within city council, that was also wonderful. So, understanding how the budget process works in the organization, how it's made, how it's done, how it's evaluated, how it's voted upon. Man, that was great. During that time, I got to do some really cool stuff, policy side. Probably one of the things I'm most proud of working there was, cities and government, counties and governments got a lot of federal money right during the COVID days. And City of Albuquerque obviously got a pretty good chunk of money. And there was a program that the mayor had done earlier in the year that was offering $1,000 grants to small businesses, right, to kind of keep them afloat during these tough times. And they could only give out 100 of these grants, but the demand was like about 1,000 small businesses who had applied for this grant. And so, sitting back at my house one day, my wife and I are just kind of, talking, having a conversation, and just came over this idea like, what if we used the federal money that we have and actually give it to small businesses? What would that look like? And so, reached out to a counselor. We crafted a bill where we ultimately appropriated $10 million to 1,000 local businesses, $10,000 grants to help them kind of stay afloat, during those COVID times. And I remember at that time, the city council meetings were being held virtual because we couldn't be in the office. And so I'm at home. I think my wife has a video of me of when the bill passed, me just kind of jumping up and down, in celebration, because it passed 9-0 unanimously in that. And I just remember thinking, like, this is why I do what I do. Like, I love this, like, to be able to think about a scenario, try to solve a problem, develop policy, that directly affects and impacts the small businesses and people that live in our city, to be able to help them, to kind of get through some of this tough times. And that was like, man, I think about that, just the things that, the power of like local governments that we have to do some of those things. That was just, it was so much fun. Brought me a lot of joy. It was during that time in city council that I met Chris Fabian, my current boss. And one of my initiatives and kind of tasks for city council was to, better help them understand the budget in terms of what they're approving. We have a $1 billion budget in the city of Albuquerque, and they really wanted to understand, like, what is it that I'm appropriating here, right? What am I not fully grasping? And so I started to dig around and try to figure out, like, well, what's out there? What are some of the things that we can do? One of the first things that I did was we employed a company called Invisio, who is actually a partner of Tyler Technologies, and they do strategic planning dashboard software. And so the reason I worked with them was that every year the city would pass objectives, right? Some of the directions that they wanted to have for the year. And because it was kind of a manual process, we would kind of lose track of what objectives we were actually hoping to gain. And so Invisio helped put those objectives in light and really be able to have transparency and accountability of, like, were we meeting those objectives that we said that we do. So that was like phase one. Phase two is I found priority-based budgeting, where, I found a system where you really want to understand how your budget aligns with your priorities as a community. And so my vision was, I have Invisio to track our objectives and our accountability side. Now I want to bring in the ability to see how much we invest in these objectives and these priorities. And so I met Chris. We had some meetings with city councilors, and we started a pilot program there at the city to tackle our public safety departments, to kind of see, like, what does priority-based budgeting look like. We kind of dabbled into it. Second year, we added a few more departments, and the project didn't quite take off as I'd hoped. I think, what I'm learning with priority-based budgeting, it is a good change, right? It's change management. It's really thinking things differently. It's really fully understand how things go. And so I like to say that maybe at the moment, the city of Albuquerque wasn't really quite ready yet to do it. And so it didn't quite pan out as I was hoping. But it led me to Tyler Technologies. I remember reaching out to Chris saying, like, man, I really love what you do. I really believe in the philosophy. I really believe that local governments would benefit from doing this. And I would really love to be able to kind of continue this mission with you. And so he was excited. He was trying to bring me on as quickly as possible. I had to wait a little bit because there was an acquisition happening. They used to be Resource X. And so he let me know, he's like, if you can hold on, we got some things happening here. If you could just be patient. I was like, sure. And so after Tyler Technologies acquired Resource X, he reached out to me, and within 2 weeks I was on staff and, starting to spread the mission of priority-based budgeting. So, and where I'm at today. And, this, again, as I think back to my career and everything that I've done along the way, just like all the little things that have happened to kind of help me get to this point, to where I get to now work with other local governments and other leadership to really try to bring this philosophy and methodology to light.
April is National County Government Month. It's a time to recognize the amazing work counties do to keep our communities running. From public safety and courts to health services, infrastructure, and everything in between, counties carry an enormous responsibility, and they do it in ways most people never see. And right now, one of the biggest conversations happening across county and local government is how artificial intelligence can help support that work. You know who's helping lead that conversation in local government? That's right, it's Tyler Technologies. Tyler's been helping counties and local governments apply AI in some significant ways, streamlining routine tasks, improving access to information, and helping staff spend more time focused on serving their communities. To help leaders understand what's possible, Tyler has released a brand new ebook. It's called AI for Impact: Proven Results for Government. It highlights inspiring examples of organizations already using AI to strengthen operations, to improve insights, and to make government services easier for residents to navigate. The best part, that ebook is free. You can download it today at tylertech.com/winter. Again, that's tylertech.com/winter. Now, back to the conversation. I love it. Okay, a couple things. First, you just to go back in the city of Albuquerque, you've been all over the place under the hood to really see. And it's interesting, not only with accounting, but with procurement, which I just got off the phone actually with Ron Holyfield, and he's talking about procurement. And just procurement can be just a massive albatross of chaos for cities and trying to figure out. And so you got to see under that hood, and then with city council, and then you're implementing this. And I kind of want to dive into that for just a second again. Because I think one of the things I want to highlight are what are the opportunities, but what are the challenges? And so I'll make assumptions and then you correct me. It seems from the work that I do that priority budgeting is challenging because there's, again, local government, county, city, you have so many departments. And especially the county level, you have electeds, not just over your board, but over sheriff. And so you have elected people over areas, whereas at least in a city, you usually have a city manager, a mayor, and then you're able to, who one voice is able to kind of bring people together. But it's still, collaboration is challenging. Everyone wants money for their thing. Everyone wants their priorities to be the thing. And you really have to work together to be able to move the ball forward significantly, or else you're just kind of, playing patty cake with all these things. That's where we have priorities. We have 12 priorities. We have 8. I remember working for the local government who had 18 priorities. I'm like, 18 priorities? No one knows those. No one remembers those. You're not creating any real energy towards something. You're just, these little tiny, not even waves, just like little, tide pools. And so was that part of the issue in Albuquerque is where, when you want to create priority-based budget, it would seem like at its height, you really have to have buy-in from everyone to row in the same direction. And if you don't have that, it probably gets really challenging to figure out how to create priorities in light of that. Was that some of the challenges? Is that even what you see today in some of those who struggle to implement it? What do you see in that world?
Yeah, that was definitely a challenge in Albuquerque. So we tried to start small. Again, we started with our public safety departments, and the reason we started with public safety was public safety. Probably in a lot of local governments, kind of got the majority of the conversation, right, every year. So they have the biggest pie of the local budget. So the city council was really trying to understand, what is it that we're doing here that on the appropriation side, why it consumes so much talk and discussion and appropriation. And so we started with public safety, knowing that hey, we're going to dive into this and it's going to be challenging. But I think that was a thing that we found tough is one, in the form of government that we're in, city council, mayor form of government is, mayor proposes a budget and city council just approves it. Now the mayor's side, they have the entire city basically at their disposal, right? They have departments, they have the directors of those departments, they have fiscal people under those departments. And so you have a whole team of city who are basically coming up with the budget and coming up with recommendations, et cetera. On the city council side, you had basically myself and maybe a few other staff members who had to take a $1 billion budget every year and somehow break it down into pieces to where city council could really understand what was happening. And the reason we had dabbled into this is because every year we were probably sending out, I would say close to 300 questions every year to departments on how, to try to understand the budget. And so me being the mind that I am of always trying to improve stuff, I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? And so we looked at priority-based budgeting. Again, the challenge was the buy-in, right? So we had some councilors who were all for it. They understood what we were trying to do. The mayor side on the House wasn't quite on board with this process. They felt like the process that they had in place worked for them. It was beneficial, and there was no need to kind of give extra work to the budget office and other teams to do something like this. And so that was kind of where we kind of butted heads a little bit. Is we were really trying to get this thing. And in priority-based budgeting, it can be hard, right? Because you're developing a new set of data that you've never had before, right? And so you do have to get buy-in and cooperation from departments, boots on the ground folks, right, to really understand like what's happening, because we're digging into beyond the traditional fund department division. We're digging into the actual services. Like, explain to me what you do, like on a daily, monthly, yearly basis, right? And so that goes beyond just saying I have this pot of money in this appropriation unit. It's like, oh no, I do this particular service. I serve this particular population of people. And so it can be challenging. It can be hard to understand some of this stuff. And so that was probably the biggest challenge, is like getting that buy-in and to really fully understand and get everyone on board, like why we were doing this. It wasn't like a gotcha moment or anything like that. It was just like, if city council really wants to be informed, what is the best way to inform them? We inform them with data. And what kind of data do we get them? Well, we get them services, we get them programs that we're providing. And then we understand, like, well, are what we do, is what we're doing working for us, right? Do we keep appropriating money in the same areas over and over and hope that things change? Or do we really start to take a deep dive into what are we actually offering? And let's evaluate whether or not those services are actually working. And where they're not working, you pivot, you make some adjustments, right? And you make some adjustments and try to invest in things that do work. And so that process also too, in the thought processes, can be scary for local governments, right? It's like, what, we're going to pivot, we're going to reallocate, we're going to what? It's like, that can also be a challenge, but in what we try to do, it's like, it is a mindset shift. And it's also like a long-term, we like to call it building a new operating system in terms of how things are being done. And so, we try to slowly bring clients on board as like, you don't need to go 100 miles an hour from the get-go. Let's take this in increments. Let's ramp up little by little and start to understand how we do this and build it across the board. So yeah, definitely buy-in, getting a full understanding of how things operate, and are some challenges in terms of getting this process off the ground.
It seems, obviously we know that the kind of the chief motto of local government is, well, that's not the way we've done it. We always do it this way. That's what we're always fighting against, is just the comfort. And that's humanity. That's not just local gov. Humanity loves its comfort, right? It does not like change. It will rather boil alive in the pot of water than jump out, because jumping out is change. And so that's one of the things. But also when I hear this, I think, now you can go, especially in today's age with Doge and all these things happening. Oh, there's corruption. All government's corrupt. And it's like, well, this is one of those ways, I think, to speak truthfully to your residents, to your staff, to really see, where does our money go? And the importance of it isn't just that. It's not, I don't think there's actually, I think we're all tempted to believe in every conspiracy theory and every corruption. But the reality is, there's money going to places that we don't just want the loudest voice and the strongest emotion to dictate. We want the data to dictate. Is this really having an impact, an effect? Is this really our priority? Because here's the thing, and I think this is why it's so important to seriously consider priority-based budgeting now, is because you don't want to wait until everything is tight and you're in a crisis. You want to do it now, because it's a data thing. It's filling in the data so that you can make decisions. So when there's a crunch, when all of a sudden federal money's not coming or state money's not coming, you're able to look and go, what are our priorities? How do we reallocate money to be able to fund the very things that matter? You can't do that if you don't have the data. And if you're trying to find that data all over, you're just scrounging in the couches for change. That's kind of what it's like, right? Inside of this big bureaucratic local gov. And so now is the time to act. Don't wait until crisis comes. And that's the sad thing. Many are feeling the crisis now with what's going on at the federal and the state level. So talk to us about some of the wins. Where are you seeing priority-based budgeting being implemented in cities and counties, and how is it actually, maybe you give into a little bit of the process and then the how, and then what are the wins? What are you seeing as far as the success stories?
In terms of the process, so, what we're trying to, a lot of times what we start off with is, many organizations, local governments, they have strategic plans, right? So they'll go through the process of coming up with, big goals, strategic plan goals. And, at that point, the biggest question is like, okay, you've gone through the process of doing that. Now does your budget align with those values, right? So like I always like to talk about in conferences and presentations and trainings is like, your budget is your policy document. It's your value statement. That's going to tell you exactly where your priorities are and where your values are. I remember a professor in college when I was getting my master's degree talked about that. Is like, if you want to understand someone's priorities, look at their checkbook. Right. And so it hit hard. It's like, oh, I would love to be a world traveler, but my checkbook says I go to restaurants every couple of days. Right. So, but it rings true because the budget document itself really tells you where your priorities are. And so the process starts with that kind of, it's like, okay, you have these plans, you have these goals. Now let's really try to get a deep dive and understand like where your dollars are going. So we start getting into developing an inventory of services or programs, like we like to call them. And that's breaking down the budget from a traditional sense. Like, again, most budgets are set up with, fund, department, division. Local governments have a general fund. What we want to figure out is like, we want to talk about things in terms of programs and services. Like, what are you offering, right? Do you teach youth sports programs? Do you have senior meal programs, right? Let's spell out the things like patrol services and SWAT teams and things like that, right? So we start to spell out the very specific programs and services that are being offered. And then we want to understand like, okay, how much time are people spending in these programs, right? And then we want to say, okay, out of all these services that you're doing, let's really align and see how they align with those priorities and those objectives and goals. And at that point is where you start to see like, okay, we need to maybe make some adjustments here. I remember in one city council meeting, we were talking about the budget, and I presented the data in a way that I think kind of like drew some interesting stares because there was a lot of talk about a lot of communities are into economic development, right? You want to bring jobs to your community and everything like that, and so everyone talks about it. And so it was one of the topics that we talked about. And so when I presented the budget from my point of view, showed them that in the general fund budget, which is about $750 million, less than 1% of that budget went towards economic development initiatives. And showing that just on a graph in a data way like that really was like, oh, okay, right? Because it's like, the thing is, you talk about this stuff and this is a goal and you want to do this, then you start to see like, okay, where are the dollars actually going? And so the dollars tell you, you say it's important. The dollars are telling you it's not important, right? And so that's where you have to make the change. It's like, okay, let's now make the shift. Now that I know that, now we can start to look at, well, how do we invest more in that? Like maybe we thought this entire time we were investing a lot of money into these areas and we're realizing that we're not. And that's not a bad thing. The data highlights that. It's like, this is the point of developing this sort of data so you can see and make those adjustments, right? And this is what I love about the things that we do, because it's kind of eye-opening sometimes. From some clients that we work with, just the idea of getting an inventory of programs and services is a huge win, because they've never looked at their budget or their operations in that way. They're used to doing things a certain way, and that's not a bad thing. It's just, this is a new way of looking at it. So sometimes just getting an inventory of services and seeing where those services align with your priorities, that's a huge win. That's like, okay, now we're really starting to understand like what we're doing and how we're doing it, right? And so I love when organizations just even get to that basic level step of that program inventory and aligning those with the priorities. When you start to get into the costing piece of like where my time is spent and where dollars are going, again, you start to understand, it's like, oh, I thought we were investing more in this and we're really not. Like, okay, like how do we make those changes? What do we need to do? So those right there are just on a very basic level are big wins that we're seeing with the clients that we work with. Now we have some clients that are just like, man, they're taking off like a rocket ship with the method. I point out Collier County, Florida in particular, who right now is just like a priority-based budgeting rock star. They're an organization that, Naples, Florida is the county seat. They're, over the last, I believe it was 13 years, they had their property taxes just kept raising every year, and so the citizens were like, they didn't really like that, right? They didn't like their property taxes going up. And, I think it was that sentiment you were talking about earlier, like, where's my money going? Like, why do we keep having to pay more property taxes? And so leadership there realized that they had to make some adjustments and changes. And so they hired us, they brought us on board, and they have really changed the way They talk about their budget, how they talk about their services. They're evaluating their things in a much different way. They're going from talking about their budget at a fund, department, division level in terms of how much money we get, what was our budget last year, to really saying like, hey, we provide this service. Let's evaluate the impact of this service. What is the service level that we need to do this service? So just completely different conversations, right, than that they were having before. I believe in their first year of implementing priority-based budgeting, between saving dollars and generating revenues, the impact was $37 million in that first year. Unheard of. It's a large number, right, in terms of doing that. And so now they've kind of gone through the process of where they're really evaluating specific services to really understand the full impact, right? So understanding that we provide, or Collier County provides, like a medical air medical unit as part of our emergency management services, breaking those pieces out, realizing like, hey, there's a piece of a component that there's a service that we provide, and there's a piece that includes like an asset that is a helicopter. And so what do we do? Do we continue to own and operate and maintain a helicopter? Or are there alternatives out there that says we have to provide the service, but from a investment public dollars standpoint, we can actually maybe save a little bit if we kind of readjust our model in terms of how we deliver that service. And so that's the type of stuff that I really love to hear, is how organizations are using it, is going away from the traditional kind of, here's where we were last year, let's start that way from this year, and then, give me some new things here and there. Rather than just asking for new budget requests every year, it's creating a scenario where we start to look at, well, what's the impact of this request, right? Even on the opposite side, if you're reducing or you're having to make some cuts in your budget, understanding the impact of those cuts, right? So if you do have to cut a service or reduce a service level, well, what does that affect? Like, what does that mean? What priority are you having to, affect by doing so? And so it's, the idea of this is like really changing the conversation of how local governments are looking at their budget. And it's not so much just like an annual exercise anymore. It's a continuous view on how public dollars are being invested, and always where you can, making those adjustments to ensure that you're meeting the most pressing needs.
Let me ask you something. If culture really matters in your organization, why isn't it being built with intention? Not discussed, not delegated, actually built and then sustained with just as much intention. Here's the hard reality. Culture isn't what your organization believes. It's what your leaders tolerate, reward, and repeat. In most cities and counties, they say culture matters while leaving it completely to chance. That's why this April, we are doing something different. Inside the Municipal Leadership Development Circle, you know it as the MLDC, we're kicking off a 3-month deep dive into organizational culture. Weekly content, conversations with leaders across North America, and live training sessions from the Leadership and Culture program. We're going to work through the ideas and insights from books like Turn the Ship Around, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and Unreasonable Hospitality. But more importantly, we're going to translate those insights into how you actually lead your team in the unique context of local government. For the first time, we're opening this up in a big way. We're offering 500 memberships to the MLDC for just $500. That gives you full access to the MLDC, the weekly content, and the vibrant community of leaders from across North America. But here's where it's really over the top. We're giving 3 months of insider access to the Leadership and Culture program. That's a $2,500 value. We're doing this because transforming City Hall from the inside out isn't just optional, it is necessary, and it's necessary right now. But here's the catch. We kick off our first live training session on the topic of culture on Thursday, April 16th. And so once the 500 spots are gone, they're gone. So if you're ready to stop talking about culture and to actually start building it, I want you to head over to haltingwinter.com/MLDC. That's haltingwinter.com/MLDC, or simply just use the link in the show notes. Secure your spot today. Now, back to the conversation. So good. It seems like two things that come to mind is it's one thing to talk about something, it's another to execute. And I think that's part of the issue. It could be city council can feel like they're talking a lot about XYZ, but the budget tells a different story about where money's actually being spent. And I think it's just like I used to be a pastor and did a ton of counseling. And I always used to say, listen, it doesn't matter what you say. It matters. You show me your calendar and you show me your online bank statement, and I'll tell you what you value and I'll tell you exactly what the problems are. And so, and it always would shock people. It was like, oh, I can't believe that. I don't think I spend that much. It's like, yeah, look, like you're going out to eat every other day. What do you think? And so it is one of those things is that we can talk about stuff or we can think about things, but the data helps. And also the other thing is local government, people don't understand local government's doing projects like economic development doesn't happen in 3 months. These are infrastructure. These things are years, oftentimes in the making. And so this way you can stay aligned. And that's one of the things I talk about priorities too. And a lot of the coaching I do is your priorities allow you, doesn't mean that you're not, priorities don't have to be rock solid, concrete, unchangeable, but it does mean if it's just like boundaries, personal boundaries, professional boundaries, et cetera, priorities. If you can't say yes to everything. Every yes requires you to say no to something else. And that's kind of the problem, it seems like, with overall government, is we just keep saying yes and we never say no. And so no wonder you're bankrupt. It's like you can't just say yes to everything. And this helps you actually evaluate, what are we doing? What is the impact? And if we're going to say yes to something new, what do we say no to? Now we can evaluate and actually make a decision.
There's a circumstance, for example, where you have an organization, a local government who's offering tourism, right? So you think about that, like, okay, it makes sense. You're trying to get people to come to your community, and then as part of this process, when you're evaluating, that's a program, realizing like, oh my God, there's other organizations within this city or county who also do the same thing, right? They're trying to also bring tourism and economic development to our community. So like, why are we the only ones doing it? Like, or why are we investing so much when we can simply partner, right? We can be involved in the conversation, but we can now partner with these organizations who probably do a really good job of this, right? And so let's not be on our own, doing this on our own. Like, let's work with other professionals, right? To really enhance this. And if that means that you can actually redirect some of those dollars that you were investing in, because now I have a partner who's helping us. Now I can attack another important priority with an organization because I've kind of freed up some resources to do so. So that, again, that's the type of stuff that we're trying to create in terms of when I mentioned operating system, is like, those are the types of questions and evaluations that we should always be looking at from a local government perspective of like, okay, we passed the budget, but let's dig into it and see like what's working, what's not working, where do we need to pivot? It's really fun. I was going to tell you a story, like when I dabbled into the priority-based budgeting with the city, I remember, a city councilor's analyst had come up to me one day. And so mind you, I'm like in charge of like understanding the budget for city council, right? And so he comes into my office one day and he was like, hey, Jesse, he's like, can you tell me how much we budget for our airplane that we have in the city? And I tell this story all the time. And so he comes and asks me this question and I'm going, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. And he's like, okay. And he leaves the office and I'm sitting there going like, we have an airplane? Like, we have an airplane at the city? Like, oh my God, I had no idea. And I even texted him, I said, we have an airplane? And so he sends me this like link to show that we operate an airplane. It's like a 1982 Cessna, right? And I was like, oh my God, that's embarrassing. Right. I should have known that. But I remember the exercise because then I had to go and try to dig, like, where is this thing? And I had to dig into the lines, into the units. I made phone calls, looked at contracts, and I came up with roughly a number, but it wasn't exact. But when we did the priority-based budgeting in the city, this program came out, right? Like the air support unit, and we had a number tied to it. We had people assigned to this program and some contract dollars assigned to it. And I believe it was around like $300,000 was the budgeted. When we looked at it from a priority-based budgeting perspective, you've never have seen that in the way we traditionally prepared the budget. And I always tell that story because one, it's funny that I didn't know that was happening. And I think a lot of maybe other people didn't know that was actually happening who weren't kind of in the situation. But now we've identified a program, a service, a dollar amount. So when this plane goes away, because you can't operate a 1982 plane forever, when it gets decommissioned, what happens to the 300,000, right? Where do we move that? There's probably new technology and new initiatives that police department can invest in. And it's like, okay, we have a number. What do we do now with it? Where's the best way to invest that money now that this plane is gone? So again, those are the kind of problem solving things that I truly enjoy, that I really try to get local governments to hopefully have those conversations on a continuous basis.
It's so true. It totally reminds me. I worked in a church once. When I came on staff, we were looking at the budget, right? And all the budget lines and all the things I was in charge of. And they had an organ fund. It was a dedicated account that, this church hadn't had an organ in like 30 years, right? And it probably before that, 20 years before it was even used. But they had this fund with like $50,000 in it that no one, but it had to be used for the organ. It was a dedicated account. So I just remember buying a keyboard and I was like, they're like, a keyboard, that's not an organ. I'm like, it has an organ button on it. It can be used. I was just like, but that's the thing. Like there's money and there's things tied up in things that we just don't even know about. The other thing too, I think back to the episode with Chris Fabian, he was mentioning about AI and this kind of bot that they're creating, like you said, about those partnership opportunities. I worked in Olympia. There's tons of churches. And so, I'm a pastor of one of them. And one of the things that concerned me the most, because homelessness is huge problem in Olympia. It's just a growing problem throughout the United States and in cities and towns of all sizes. And is so many churches were doing something individually to try to help and try to, meet a need. But the problem is no one was working together. And so there was just it was just crazy. It created this, it was actually hurting the problem more than it was bringing any help to it. And that's what we just needed to know. And we were trying to create meetings and things where let's get on the same note together. Now with AI, we're able to, I think, pull these tools together to see what are the other places. So if we have a budget crisis, maybe the first thing we do isn't necessarily cut. Maybe it's partner. Maybe it's how can we work together? And I'm really encouraged, especially at the county level. It seems so many counties, I think of Wisconsin, I was just there talking to them about the same thing, that they're working together for emergency response personnel. And they don't have a choice, especially in these rural places. They have to work together. And I think it's cool that maybe sometimes what your pain points allow you to think creatively, because it's uncomfortable to think creatively. You don't want to change, it's work. But this is one of those things where here's a tool that can help you make a good decision for not only your present need, but also for your future. We want to be good stewards of the resources, of the time of our employees. We want to help them feel like they're being purposeful and passionate about what they're giving themselves to. And this is one of the tools, I think, that can do that. So anything else in encouraging, what's a first step? What do they need to do? They reach out to Jesse? Do they find you? What do they need to do to take a first step to see how this tool might help them?
Yeah, definitely. They can reach out to me. I would say that'd be a really good step. But I think the one thing that you mentioned AI, and in terms of technology and things, and so one of the ways that we're utilizing the power of AI is we're using it as a catalyst, right, to kind of help get these things off the ground. So for a lot of organizations who might be maybe thinking about doing this or not quite sure, maybe they're worried about like staff time or just how this is going to butt into the day-to-day operations. It's like we're utilizing AI to kind of drive as a catalyst. And so what we can do is take, your organizations like General Ledger, we can take your position detail and we can come up and say, okay, based on what we see here, we can use AI to help you predict those programs and services, right? So I can very quickly, in a matter of minutes, upload a GL and some positions and provide you a department with 15 to 20 programs and services that look like you offer, just based on your own information and your data. Now that's pretty powerful, because if you, as my experience of implementing this on the City of Albuquerque side, starting from scratch, getting people to kind of sit down and talk about like what it is that we do, that's a challenge, right? Because you're in your day-to-day operations. This is a little bit extra I got to do. But if I could present you with information that was based off your own information, your own data with programs and services, you now become a reviewer. Now I get to look at it and say, oh yeah, we do provide these things, or we provide something similar, but I'm going to make a little bit of an adjustment, right? So we're really utilizing the AI to be a catalyst for folks that might be, kind of thinking about this process. So very quickly, I can get you a program inventory that you could review. We can do an evaluation of your programs based on the history of organizations that we've worked with. Say, what we see in organizations that this particular program of service is a highly mandated service, and it serves the majority of your population, and it doesn't recover any costs. Again, we can utilize our AI tool to get you started. And so where you're not having to sit there and start from scratch and think about what it is, like, oh, I have this data in front of me that I can now look at and just check and say, oh, yep, that's true. Yep, that's true. Oh, no, that might be an adjustment. But think about the time savings that occurs as opposed to like starting from scratch. Is I can give you essentially an entire priority-based budgeting model in a matter of minutes, a matter of a week or so, to that you can then start to review and refine and make adjustments to, as opposed to starting from scratch. And so that's kind of the beauty of what we're doing with the AI stuff, is that to really get people to understand, like, we can help you. Like, this isn't going to be something that we're just going to send you off on your way. Like, we're going to be there step by step with you to do that. And we can utilize technology. And it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy working with Chris, very innovative in this world of coming up with these tools, recognizing that maybe for some organizations, starting from scratch can be a challenge. It's like, okay, we have tools to kind of get you jump started. I can get you 75% of the way there. That's better than zero, right? And so that's kind of the fun part about it. Also, what we're doing is like, how do we utilize this technology available to us now to really pinpoint and help organizations kind of get this started? We're dabbling into like enhancing that program inventory development, is like looking at things like, if I looked at your job description and your budget book, like I can really get a pinpointed program inventory list and allocation of your time based on what you say your organizations do. And so again, very powerful to be able to work with organizations, say like, here's what we think is happening. And as an organization, you can sit back and say, okay, I can do this. Like, I can review this and make adjustments and see where this is going. So it's been a lot of fun. So there's got to be like the first steps is like, I know this sounds like it would be like a large project, but when we can have these tools in place, we can really lessen the time that it takes to get there. And even at a high level, if you don't dig in super deep, it does allow you to at least get a snapshot of where things may stand. And they can even reveal some things right away that you may not have been aware of, right? So if we use AI tools to come up with insights, and it recommends that, hey, we see other organizations have worked with local church groups and nonprofit organizations to address the homelessness issue, and here's how this city did it, here's how this county did it. That's like, oh, okay, there's an idea. Someone's actually done it. We have a proven case study that someone actually did it. It is possible. Now let's evaluate whether it worked in our community, if we can do that here. So it's the catalyst. It gets the conversation going. These might be ideas that you've already had or might have been thinking about doing. Now you get the satisfaction of knowing that someone has actually already done it. And so it's like, okay, let's move forward with this. Like, now we got some confirmation that, that we can do some of this stuff. So it's fun to dabble in this and really understand, like, at the end of the day, like, our tools and our methods are really meant to help. As I went back earlier in the podcast, like, seeing how people in local government, they really do care about the things that they're doing and the functions and the services that they're providing to citizens. And so where we can help them be more efficient, come up with some new ideas, new creative ways of providing services, funding those services. Like, I think anyone would welcome that from a local government perspective. And that's what we're trying to do. Just trying to be helpful and coming up with some of these ideas.
I love it because what you said, it's not just using AI to give you a hypothetical, which is kind of like how we use ChatGPT now or whatever. It's like, give me ideas. Instead, it's actually showing you, the idea is to be able to go, hey, this place did this, Denton did this, or Pittsburgh did this, or whoever. And I think that's the beauty. I had Peter Trodson on over a year ago. He's city manager in Albany, Oregon, and he was in the Coast Guard for a number of years, high-ranking guy in the Coast Guard. And he said the biggest transition from him, from Coast Guard to municipality, was the lack of standard operating procedures. He's like, if I'm in a helicopter with a pilot from Florida and a pilot from Maine, we all know the same because we all operate under the same standard operating procedures. And he goes, in municipalities, you go state to state, you go city to city, neighboring cities aren't even operating the same. And so you can kind of feel all alone. You can kind of feel like every problem is your own problem. And so this is a tool to help you not only see the other options, but connect you to go, hey, this city already did this. Learn from them. Let's connect you. So I think it's the beauty of, it helps make the world smaller in ways that can help us take some bigger strides forward than just the baby steps of, man, is it going to work? So love it. Love this stuff. Such good, it's cool to see the tools being developed to help us really continue to help places thrive and flourish.
It's funny you mentioned Coast Guard. I recently had taken a trip to San Diego just for fun, visited family, and we're out there, and we got to visit the USS Midway. And one of the things they had in the museum they had there, they called it the Naval Intelligence Cycle, and they talk about like what they do in terms of how they come up with their operations and plans and stuff. And it really inspired me from a professional standpoint, because I thought about like the steps that it took. It's like, man, we have like the PBB intelligence cycle is what we're trying to create here, where you have your goals and objectives, you're getting the data, gathering the data to see, where you're lacking or where you're meeting the needs. Then you're looking at recommendations and insights and seeing how like, okay, what are the things that we could do here? Like, what are some plans that work? And then you have the execution side. Okay, now that we've figured out what we can do, let's actually implement these things and try it. And then evaluating, how did it work? What did we do? And then that cycle starts all over again, right? And then you have your objectives and your data and your insights and your implementation plans and your review. And so it was perfect, because I was like, this is exactly from a PBB perspective, and what we're again trying to create for local governments is that operating procedure, right? So you talk about like being able to operate a helicopter and anything. It's like we want local governments to kind of have this operating procedure so that everyone is kind of following the same playbook and blueprint.
I love it. I love it. And just a plug, man, that Midway, I did that a few years ago back in San Diego. It was so fascinating. Oh, so cool. One of our tour guide actually was like I think he like served on it or something. He was some bigwig on it. It was like amazing. It was so cool. Oh, man. Well, Jesse, what else? Is there anything else that we should hit and cover in light of this? So many good takeaways.
No, I think when we're conversing earlier about like, career paths and, talking to young people, one of the things I would say is like, you never know, where you're going to land or where things are going to take you. You just never know. And I would always encourage anyone to like follow passions, follow dreams, consume as much as you can, do the many things that you can do. And you just never know like where all that's going to help and where it's going to take you. I think back to my time in college and being a writer and being a reporter, and then, being in accounting. Like, I don't even consider myself an accountant anymore. Like I have an accounting degree, but I don't even consider myself an accountant anymore. Right now I work for a software company. Right. And so I would have never have guessed that my career would have taken here. But as I look back, it makes total sense, because everything that I've ever done has kind of led me to where I'm at now. And I think the ability, working with Tyler, dabbling in these AI tools and working with professionals on how this all works, like, knowing that this is the future, it's like now I get to be part of like the next wave of whatever that looks like, right? And so being able to learn, understand, figuring out how to build, some of these things is like, it's going to help not only myself, but it's really going to help whoever I encounter, in any realm of space that I work at. And so who knows where things are going to be for me in 5 or 10 years, but I would really encourage like, one, local government is great. I love it. There's so many things that you can do. If you're into service, that local government is a great place to work for in terms of providing and serving for your community. There's so many things in there that you can do. Like any career that you could think about, local government probably has it. And so that's why I think a reason why it's like, I love this stuff. Like, and I've always just been a type of person that, where can we always improve and where can we like innovate? And local government is a great place to do that. And there's a lot of room there. And so I'm glad where I'm at now. And I hope I can continue to work with these organizations for a long time.
It's so cool. I love that a resounding theme of this podcast, of these stories, of people's stories, is they just say yes. They say yes to opportunity. And I think what's cool about, I was going to ask you about it actually, but back to your, the initial part of your story, when you get the education, you go out and you're doing tax, returns basically. And you're like, dude, what have I done? This is not it. And then you say yes to, hey, there's this opportunity to go audit. You're like, okay, I'll do it. And then you're like, ding, ding, ding. This is it. I found it. Right. And so, but you didn't just bail. You continue to kind of figure it out. And I think that's the encouraging thing, is that wherever you're at right now, whatever, you're young, maybe you're in college, maybe you're in your career, maybe you're 20 years into your career, and you're just like, man, I'm a little stale. What can you say yes to? How can you just continue to level up and look for different opportunities that might reignite the juices? And the beauty is your career in the city of Albuquerque. Yeah, so many. I mean, I see 6 positions on the resume. Those all helped you now understand. You didn't just go to Tyler Tech and learn their kind of thing, and now you're trying to pitch this thing. You went through and you understood now from working in it to go, guys, like, this is how it helps. This is how it actually helps, because I've been there. I've been in the frustration. I've been in the opportunity and the excitement. Now here's a tool, and that's how it's cool that you're able to continue to use, either it's AI or whatever it is, to continue to make that tool even better. Because at the end of the day, the mission of local government, it's not like we're Amazon just trying to get books to people or stuff that's going to be in our garage. We're doing the everyday work that's impacting people in their modern lives. Again, we all take it for granted. We just expect our water to turn on, our sewer to flush. But like, without that, can you imagine life without what local government gives you? Like, no one's living that life. It's turning into like The Walking Dead in like 2 days, right? And
Yeah.
so I love it. I love what you're up to. I love what you're doing. I'm going to put your information in the in the show notes. And so if that interests you, obviously you can go to tylertech.com/winter. It's the Halting Winter podcast. Go to that link and you can download. They got the new free ebook, AI for Impact. And so I know a lot of people are asking, how do we actually use AI? What should we do? What do we not need to do? And so that's a great resource. And so, man, Jesse, what an incredible story you have. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for your insights. And I'm looking forward to I'm sure you're going to be on the conference thing, or maybe that's Chris's thing. It's like, you're like the Batman. It's not the Batman and Robin here. This is like Batman and Superman. It's like the full DC comic duo coming at us.
Yeah, luckily I get to do some conferences and present and stuff. So yeah, I'll be at Tyler Connect in April in Las Vegas. I'll be talking about priority-based budgeting and introducing how local governments can kind of get into this space. So yeah, I do get to go out there and speak. And I found myself, even as someone who's introverted as myself, being able to go out there and talk about this and present to cities and counties. Like, I really enjoy it. It really is something that drives me. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to Tyler Connect and probably some of the next big ones, ICMA and GFOA. Yeah.
There it is. Well, be out there, be looking, be connecting, and Jesse's in your corner, ready to help and serve. Thanks for sharing today, Jesse.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate you having me on the podcast.
The stories we share here on the Halting Winter podcast remind us where government really lives, locally, right here in our cities, our counties, the communities that shape our everyday life. If today's conversation resonated with you, please subscribe and share the episode to help these stories reach others. I'm Seth Winterhalter. You can find me at HaltingWinter.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.